Okay, thank you.
So how you doing? How's everything? How's your we talked about getting some new clothes.
Yes, I went shopping on Friday, and I got new work pants, and I really felt when I walked into the store this time, it was an opportunity to buy clothes rather than a punishment for not having lost weight yet.
Yeah. Oh, that had to have been fun.
It was, and I, I found pants that fit, which I always would, but I didn't. It was back to these aren't smaller yet. I don't want to buy them, so I'm not going to.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the pants in my size. I'm short, so I had to take them to get hemmed. I'm going to pick them up tomorrow from the dry cleaners. But I found 3 nice pair of work pants, and then I found 2 shirts. It's not that cold here in Los Angeles during the winter, and even our cold is like not freezing. It's, to me, anything under 65 is freezing, but technically it's not that cold.
Yeah, it's like 20 degrees here.
Yeah. So the clothing is just, I only bought 2 shirts because it's like they're forgetting who they're selling to. This is California. And a lot of their clothes are just not really anything that I would like that much anyway.
Yeah.
So I didn't not buy a lot of shirts out of, and all of these are long sleeve, which I don't wear to work anyway because my job's a little physical and then I get sweaty.
Yeah.
So when spring comes or in the fall they start selling their spring, I'll get more work shirts then.
Yeah.
But right now I just got 2. Not because nothing fit, but just because I'm not going to wear it. If I bought it, I wouldn't wear it.
Yeah. So that had to have been. Sometimes people feel like relieved, like finally there's a relieving feeling to it. Between only because it's some people can be triggered shopping. Like if I see that number, oh my God, how am I going to respond? The other thing is getting rid of older clothes that are like your thinner clothes, the stuff that took starvation for you to fit into, your starvation clothes. A lot of people think, hold on to those clothes because they represent like, I did it, but they also represent the suffering that it took. So that's why I call them starvation clothes.
Right.
So you kind of see them differently because that's what they took. Getting rid of those clothes can be very, very liberating as well because it means you're done. It's like packing up your box or packing up your, a significant other's shit and sending it off.
Okay.
Right? And you could say you did have a significant other. It was that thinner ideal that you were grasping at, thinking that it would make your life better, when in reality it made your life a whole lot more dark.
It did. And
so you call them your darkness clothes, starvation clothes, abuse clothes.
So the work clothes work pants that I have right now are just like I explained last week. They're just being held together by thread. So I'm actually very excited to, wear my new pants to work for the next week. It's like my own Christmas,
Yeah, of course.
And you show up to school the day after Christmas with your new clothes on.
Heck yeah.
When you're a kid.
That's right. That's so great.
It was nice. And then about a block up from this clothing store is a Taco Bell. And I think that probably 99% of the time after I went clothes shopping, whether or not I found something that fit, I would hit that Taco Bell and binge.
Yeah.
Because I was, self-pity that I still had to buy the same size or a bigger size.
Well, shopping was full of stress and anxiety. Stress, anxiety, and shame, right? Embarrassment. Think of all the emotions that you would have to hold, that you were holding on to. You didn't have to hold on to them, but you were holding on to those emotions, and why you would, go to something like that. And intentionally, you might have actually convinced yourself to go shopping because you could binge afterwards, I don't know. You could look at that and go,
I've always not liked clothes shopping, because they don't make, like, the clothes that I look at that I like, it's not necessarily that they're thinner clothes, but the styles are better. Like, the shirts, I think, look better sometimes. And so when I go into these bigger girl stores, sometimes it's just like, they need new designers. Anyway, so this time I shopped and went home, and then I realized on the way home that I didn't stop at Taco Bell. I was like, wait a minute. Like, when I shopped, all of it was a positive experience. Even trying on the pants that didn't, one size and one style just didn't fit right. But there was no like hopelessness or anything negative about it all.
Yeah, no self-criticism.
Yeah, it was just.
You probably went.
Well, I don't remember the last time I shopped. And was happy to be shopping, even when I would find clothes to fit before. I would still binge after. And I only shop when I need something. I'm not somebody who shops. I shop because I need like a new shirt for something, or I'm not a regular shopper.
So if you had to write a report on why it is you used to binge after shopping, what would you say? Like, how would you explain why you used to binge, and why was it this time so easy?
Well, before it was because I was shameful that I was still in bigger sizes.
Yeah, self-hatred.
And that I was punishing myself because I wasn't wearing smaller clothes. This time I didn't have any. At that, before, the disappointment wasn't in that I couldn't find anything. It was that I was still having to buy the same size or bigger.
Yeah, so you're failing.
The next time I shop, I want to be a size 14 next time I go in there.
Yeah. Okay, so do you see how that you might have, in thinking that, so saying next time I'm going out, I'm going to be a smaller size. This kind of coordinates with that attitude you used to think after you go to a doctor's office and they'd say, you need to work on your blood pressure. And you'd be like, I'm going to do it. That I'm going to take care of this. This is it. I'm sick and tired of this. I'm going to do something about it. So for you leaving the mall and saying, I'm going to be a size 14 next time I go, what you're essentially saying is I have to start dieting now. I'm done eating now. Did you ever get that?
Oh, completely.
So you think that's why you would start binging? Is because you immediately committed to losing the weight, which means you committed to dieting. So you might as well get as much as you can eat in right now, because today's your last day.
Oh yeah, no, this is my last binge forever.
Okay, so that's why you would binge the days you'd shop. It wasn't necessarily because of anything other than when you walked out of that mall or walked out of that store, the diet started. Or the pressure to diet. Do you see how those go hand in hand?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, this is really important to recognize when you look at the binge. The binge is typically paired, or it's like the outcome of an equation. So A plus B equals binge, right? We could say self-shame plus I have to fix it, plus I have to diet, right?
Yes.
Equates to binge. You combine all that together, the self-hatred, the self-loathing, the sense of failure, feeling inadequate, the pressure to fix it, time constraint around I have to diet now or soon, why that would promote you feasting before famine.
That's very deep.
Well, it's kind of like the equation of why, that's in that situation, that's what I would say is the binge is not necessarily caused by self-hatred. It's more so in line with the commitment to fix it. It's the commitment to fix it.
Okay.
So if you're in your mind saying I have to be a size 14 the next time I go, you're probably thinking, what is it going to take for me to get down there?
I have to starve myself.
Yeah, I can't have this, I can't have that, I can't enjoy this, I got to get rid of that, I'm done.
Right.
And there's some excitement in that. Don't you agree? The challenge, and there's excitement, and there's a sense of control in that I'm going to do this.
Oh, completely. Like when I'm in that phase, it's complete. I don't know what I'm looking for. It's just like nothing's gonna go wrong. It's gonna happen. Like, at that moment, I know that it's gonna happen. There is no self doubt anywhere. I don't know if it just it'll last the 10 minutes or the half an hour, but in that time, I know that 14 is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like opportunity is knocking, and nothing is going to stop me.
Mm-hmm. Except for this first binge before. And last binge. This is the last binge.
Right.
Before I am committed. So it's the commitment to it. Oftentimes, I get people who aren't committing. They overeat. They're overeating. They're not binging because they haven't committed to the diet yet.
Okay.
Or the diet they're committing to is pretty far off in front of them. Like it's not right now. It isn't immediate. It's going to be next year.
Mm-hmm.
And you've probably binged in that time too. Well, I might as well because I'm gonna, at the end of the summer. So all summer you kind of have this excessive feasting, and it may not be massive binging like you would prior, like the day before you're gonna diet. Because I'm assuming too, when you commit to that size 14 and you got excited and euphoric about it, again, that's paired with deprivation. So the first thing you do is secure yourself with food before going into that deprivation. Because part of it is that you're aware now of how depriving it feels. So the more aware you are of how depriving it feels, the more likely you are to binge before you do it.
Okay.
Think of like a brand new dieter. Think of a brand new dieter who's not aware of how hard this is going to be. They're just going off of the commercial. It's so easy. It's no big deal. You drink these shakes, and I'm like so happy. And they are totally clueless around like what it's going to feel like in a social environment, where everybody else is enjoying the food, but you can't eat it because it's not on your plan. And so they're completely naive to that feeling of deprivation. And you're not naive about it. You know exactly what it feels like. It feels like shit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to eat this. I'm not going to be able to eat popcorn at the movies. I'm not going to be able to, all of that stuff. So you feast heavily. Anyways.
Yeah. It's like that you're about to go through a diet punishment.
Yeah.
Like I've always felt like I was now paying my dues for how I had been living and paying my dues included. Dieting and starving.
Yes. And that's what you have to do.
You're what you deserve because you were bad.
And now, because you gave yourself all that freedom to eat, you gave yourself all that stuff, and you need to control yourself now because we're going to get into that size 14 fantasy. And there's that mirage, right? There's a mirage. It's right there. It's right there. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it now. So there's that part, the euphoria and the excitement about the 14, but it's paired with the control and restriction with food, which can also be euphoric because it feels like you have your shit together. It's like how people feel at the New Year's. I'm going to keep my house clean. I'm going to keep my desk organized. I'm going to, everything's going to be clean. Every sheet, all of my sheets and towels are going to be perfectly pressed and organized, and everything's going to be perfect. And you're like nesting, right?
Right, like the first 3 days. And then...
Well, and then you're not in reality. What you're doing, involves a lot of focus, a lot of generated energy devoted to that. So energy is minimized in other areas, and sometimes reality requires the life energy that you have needs to be elsewhere. And so all of a sudden you're starting to juggle. You got, 5 things you're juggling, and one of the things is like on fire. The other one has razor blades on it. And so this whole concept of all my towels are going to be folded perfectly, and I'm going to have the house perfectly clean, and I'm going to have those vacuum lines always in order, and my food is going to be perfect, is just like, it's not realistic. And so if you can't manage it all of a sudden you're like, screw it, I can't do this. I failed. So once again, I failed. Not only am I failing because I can't fit into that size 14 and I feel like a piece of shit, but now I'm failing the rescue, which is the diet. Can't rescue myself. So I failed at that. Screw it. I'm not going to deal with it right now. So you're kind of flip-flopping between being the victim of the body and being the victim of the diet. And being victim of the fact that you think you suck so much. But yet you're still holding on to these standards that are higher than your capacity. Not seeing that those standards that you're committing to that are higher than your current capacity or that are beyond reality, that those standards are the problem. Right? I often get asked, well, what's wrong with wanting to improve yourself?
Right.
What's wrong with wanting to improve yourself? Well, improve yourself is relative to what? Grading system. Improve yourself in relation to what grading system? No one ever questions that grading system. Right, no one ever questions the grading system.
Right, like who it belongs to, like...
Yeah, improve
like
myself.
Society's image or your own flawed image.
Well,
like
you're
rating myself now versus 5 weeks ago in our first conversation. Completely different. Like I can't eat, like how I feel is so, I feel like it's a completely different person.
But you're not. You're the same person. You're just in a different state of being. Like your state of being is completely different, right?
Right.
And it didn't take self-help books. It didn't take, you follow these steps. It just took took awareness. That's all it took was some awareness, didn't it? I saw it differently. It changed everything. Why would you go back to looking at it the way you used to? But yeah, I mean, when you hold yourself to, I got to improve myself. Was that our goal here? To improve you?
The goal here was to, I don't know, well, probably initially I thought so, but the goal was to just, which I didn't realize, just make me aware of how I was thinking was completely wrong.
Getting rid of the falsehood is what we've been doing. It's not changing you. This isn't re-brainwashing you a different way. Telling you what you have to be. what you have to do. I haven't told you any of that, like, you have to be this. I'm saying this is what it will feel like, and it will come natural. You won't have to force it or try. You won't even have to memorize. It just shows up. But in order for that to happen, we have to get rid of these false beliefs, or these blocks, if you want to call them a block, to perception. Right?
Right.
And then the ease of you going shopping at the store is like, it's easy. It wasn't like, I mean, the goal was that you did it, but you know, not feeling bad about yourself wasn't hard to do. You just didn't feel bad about yourself.
No.
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen if you have to lose weight? What happens to that feeling bad about yourself?
Well, then you think about your past experiences and how you're a failure, and how you got to where you are, and the pressure of what you have to do now.
Shows up, and then what happens to how you feel about yourself? If you have to lose weight, how do you feel about yourself?
Oh, shitty. You're not good enough.
No, you suck.
Improve.
Yeah,
right.
You suck. You're inferior. You're inadequate. You're not good enough. And not only that, but you have all of that work ahead of you. It feels like pressure. Pressure occurs. Ugh, isn't that awful? When you just thinking about it, doesn't it just go, oh God, puke?
It does.
Because you've lived with that for a long time. You lived with that.
I know, and it's gross.
I know, it's, oh my God, it's like going back in jail. It's like going back into being held hostage. And you held yourself hostage long enough. Could you imagine being forced to go back into that situation?
No, I wouldn't do it.
Right? So the question is, would you rather go back into that pressure and darkness, or be fat and overweight and big and size whatever it was your size is? Size 18, size 20. Which one would you rather?
I'd rather be how I am now.
Right? And then as you look at that, is it really as bad as it was made to be?
Not at all. No.
I know. That's what's amazing too, is before, the same exact body to you was so worthy of shame and loathing and disgust and judgment, and think of all the dark negative energy that you projected onto the body, as if it was it was happening to you. The body was doing it to you, and now it's like, what is that? What is the deal? It's really not that big of a deal. Of course it would be easier. Of course, smaller clothes would be easier. But is it worth suffering for? Is that ease worth the suffering?
Oh, absolutely not.
No, you say that now. You say that now, but you could say before it was distorted the other direction. That ease was like amazing. It was magnified into being huge, right? Fit in those clothes. It's going to be like Santa Claus, and like huge. And then you made your body bigger in terms of you catastrophized it. So it's called cognitive distortion. You're distorting thinnerness to be better than it really is, and you're distorting fatterness to be worse than it really is. Right now, would you say that you're distorting thinnerness to be worse than it is and fatterness to be better than it is? Because that's not the goal. The goal is that you're neutral about it. Thinnerness you're neutral about, fatterness you're neutral about.
Right. I can say that like I was still, while I was shopping, I was still like looking at the smaller sizes, but it wasn't that, oh, someday I'm going to fit into these.
Yeah.
Not like before.
It didn't make you feel like you were lacking or at a loss.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, wow, okay, a smaller size would give me more clothing store options. It didn't have, and it made me wish that I knew how to sew. You know, it wasn't going to, this size 22 is gross looking versus the 14.
Yeah, you didn't emotionalize it. That's what you're saying. It was pretty logic to you. It's like a numbers game. It's like 16, 20. Who gives a shit? Neither really is emotionalized. Granted, 16 would be, there'd be more shops to shop at. You didn't emotionalize that either. That has to feel so good. Because there's no drama, and it didn't take over your day. Your whole day wasn't destroyed by those thoughts.
No, and I was so proud of myself.
Oh my God, that's so huge. That right there. I remember when I was sick and I was in that space that I couldn't even imagine that freedom. Like, I just was like, I'll never be able to be free to not think about my size and shape and weight and food and diet ever. I don't know how you can get out of this. It feels like it's permanently burned into my brain. And so the fact that you're saying that just, oh, I'm so excited for you. That right there, don't you agree, is a miracle?
Oh, it is, completely. Yeah. And the only time I thought I could be proud of myself would be if I had lost weight. And it never happened.
Yeah. Do you see now in your own, now that you have maybe some distance, you're looking at this with some distance, do you see now how much more your body image issues played a role in this eating disorder than the food?
98%.
Right? I just think that it's doing people such a disservice to just focus on the food. That's not the issue. It's clearly part of the weapon you're using, right? It's like, this is a war. Food is a weapon. It's a shield. It's a weapon and a shield. It plays both roles. But it's not why you're at war. You know, it's just a weapon and a shield. That's it. It's the primary weapon and shield. But
exactly.
It's not why you're at war. You're at war with your size and your weight. And so you got to wonder why you're having this battle with your weight. And that battle with weight is the actual underlying source of the issue, which stems from the belief that it is an unquestionable, non-negotiable goal that you have to be thin. You're an indentured servant to that thinness. And you know what? You don't have to be. It's a choice. So by accepting that you can handle it, going into your own mind and asking, can I live in this body if it were permanently this way? If it meant freedom from all that war. If it gives you freedom, right? So there is a payoff to be accepting this body. What is the payoff for you to accept your body right now? And unconditionally forever, what's the payoff that you get?
Freedom from the shame and the guilt.
All of it.
And the fear.
And the work.
The neuroses.
And the shame.
The work.
And the guilt. And the obsession. And just complete and total paralysis. You know, look at the size and scale that it was for you. It was everything. 98%? 98? Yeah, it was about that high for me too. 2% was how to go to sleep. And I hate waking up. How do I kill myself? Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, and the worst thing is going to bed, not like if you didn't wake up, who cares?
I know. See, yeah, I know. There's truth in what I just said, even though it's pretty dark. I think that's what's important too, is not just looking at how we've cognitively distorted thinness to be bigger and more important and more rewarding than it really is, and then distorting fatness to being worse than it really is. But we've, you know, look at the act of dieting and what the whole entire like consequences of this. Look at how magnified your shame was over something like body weight. So the shame around it was huge. It was really distorted from the reality of should someone who's 22, size 22, be ashamed of themselves? Is that worthy of that quantity of shame? Especially when you take into account how they got there. Right?
Right.
Is it really worthy of shame? That's this amount. So you could say the amount of shame that you carried with your weight, even when you were a size 14. You know, do you remember when you went from a size normal to 14, 15, 16, you know, when you went from a size 8 to overweight?
Well, let's see.
Oh, that might have been during your college years when you were like justifying it.
Right.
Yeah. But even then, the moment you were like, I have to fix this.
Yeah.
You probably felt it was a catastrophe. You know.
Oh, completely.
Yeah, so it's catastrophized even
yeah,
when you're smaller. So it's constantly catastrophized to being distorted to being worse than it really is. So your shame is magnified. So other people at the same weight may not have carried the same degree of shame. So their response to dieting wasn't as all or nothing or perfectionistic. So what's their likelihood of binging if they're not all or nothing or perfectionistic about dieting?
Right.
It's less. So the magnitude of your binging, you could say, was in direct relationship to the magnitude of your shame. And in between that is the magnitude of the deprivation you had to tolerate to be thinner. It's fascinating to look at this from a distance, don't you think?
It is, because it seems like I can analyze it. Now I'm not in it.
Mm-hmm.
I can recognize what it is and what it was, rather than living in the moment of it, where you think you're doing the right thing.
And
you're doing the right thing to fix everything.
Yeah, and not realizing that it's super impulsive when you're in it. You're extremely impulsive. There's very little thinking. There's a lot of decisions being made, but they're impulsively being made. You know, whereas now you can go, well, I can see why that failed. You know, and it's so understandable under the severity of it. That type of severity, you're going to have this type of severe response to it. You know.
Yes.
And it's so forgivable and understandable. But when it really comes down to it, what do you think it would take for you to go back into that?
Oh, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. No, I won't.
Well, I want to know if you know what it would take.
I mean, I can't say it would never happen. I mean, never. That those dark times. No, I don't want those back.
Okay, so my question is, what would it take for you to go back there? Think about that. What would it take for you to go back there? I have the answer right now. I wish I could scroll it on this screen. Do you know the answer?
Well, dieting?
Well, that's secondary. So the answer is yes, but that's not, you would have to want to be thinner.
I see.
That feeling of want. I want to be thinner. which then creates discontent with the body you're in. So it can be triggered by discontent with the body you're in, but that's because in this specific circumstance, you would rather be thinner. Right? So it could be going on vacation. It could be going and seeing family. It could be someone making a comment. It could be a moment where you feel vulnerable and you feel the need and want to be thinner. And then blaming your weight. So do you see why? So you're going to binge before you even start a diet.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, because you've got to before you go on the diet. So do you see how we're pairing this? It's not just one thing. It's like the combination of this, the combination of feeling that the body has done you wrong because of its size and the wanting of the thinnerness paired with the commitment to deprive and diet. And then the time frame that you have between present now and the implementation of the restriction. Diet. That's the binge. So the feeling of I wish I could be thinner, I want to be thinner, that's coming from whatever environmental trigger that says if you were thinner, you'd be better, So feel that. Go into the feeling of the wanting to be thinner, and you see how that right there ultimately adds that pressure.
I could see that, certainly, because it's an optimistic feeling, and
well, that has the fantasy attached to it, right? There's a fantasy there that it's going to be worth it. So
everybody's going to know.
It's going to be worth it. So I want you to really think, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? So keep in your mind the dark suffering. Combine the fantasy and the dark suffering and tell me if it's still worth it.
No, absolutely not.
I don't think so either. It's been 20 years for me, and I still to this day would rather be 500 pounds. I would. The only alternative then is suicide for me, That keeps it so clear in my head. I'll never forget.
And it is too, as for me, it's only been a few weeks where my thinking has changed, and I already feel a difference. But I don't want something to happen where I would start to backslide.
Yeah,
well, I don't think that I'd ever get back there. I mean,
being consciously aware. Yeah. Being consciously aware of what would do it is important. Conscious, like the choice to want to be thinner. What in the world is worth the suffering for that thinness? Because you can get the thinness. Is it worth the suffering that it's paired with? Because you don't just get thinness without suffering. You don't. Not with that intention. Right? Not with that integrity. So you have to pair the thinnerness with suffering. What is worth that? Someone's love for you, is it worth it? They want your thinness, which means you have to suffer for their love. Do you want it?
No.
Right? Your parents' approval? You want their approval.
I already have it.
I know, right? Just go through the scenarios in your head. Some vacation fantasy experience, is that worth the suffering? For what?
Nope. Right.
For some narcissistic idea that you're the center of the vacation? Of course not. So it's like really consciously looking at those things and saying, I'd rather go and be the largest person on the cruise. I'd rather go, I personally would rather have diabetes. To me, that is in terms of the mental illness or the physical condition, I'd rather have the physical condition. Really let that sink in. Mental illness and darkness and suffering, anxiety, panic, depression, obsessive compulsiveness, or diabetes. I'd rather have diabetes. I'd rather someone cut my legs off. Right? Go when you compare that darkness to any physicality because I can handle. Dying. I am okay with dying. But permanently suffering in the depths of hell forever? No thanks. No thanks. There's no amount of superiority.
Interesting you mentioned the diabetes because I got my blood work back. Some more blood work back, and I'm in the pre-diabetic range for
well, it's understandable.
The blood sugar and A1C. So
yeah, well, look at how long you've been suffering for, and how long the body has been there for you. You know? Don't you agree? The longer you're no longer doing what caused that, it should resolve itself. And if it doesn't, it's okay. And this is where you have to forgive yourself for the damages that might have been done. Yeah, you got to forgive yourself. You didn't know that wanting to lose weight with this type of desperate need created this, primal instincts to binge. Primal. Hoarding. It's very animalistic, You didn't know that. Everything you're told is that if you lose weight, so you were just naively doing what you were told to do and what you thought was the right thing to do. So the fact that your body is now showing signs of fatigue, are you going to be okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. I had diabetes, full-on diabetes. That's what the blood work showed. Not because of weight, because of stress. It's gone now. My body's functioning fine now, but during that time, there was a 5-year period I'd moved 5 times. Across the country, 3 of those 5,
Yeah, that'll do it.
You right? I know. I feel I have to forgive myself for putting my body through something like that and allow it the time to heal itself.
And we are always taught that diabetes is because of your diet.
Well, some of that is fear mongering, and just as they're still learning about it.
So I have a follow-up appointment tomorrow. To check my blood pressure again. I've been on the blood pressure meds for a week now.
Yeah.
And then she didn't really say anything about the diabetes. Just came in a message from my doctor.
Yeah.
Just so that I would be aware. And then elevated cholesterol. And then my vitamin D was barely even registering on the scale.
Yeah.
So she gave me some vitamin D meds.
I'm really curious as to where these numbers are going to be in 6 months. Not your weight. I could care less about your weight, but the stress markers. All of what you're seeing is stress. And inflammation, clearly. So just by having this recovery, could you, with this recovery, if given the time, how will your body be in 6 months doing nothing really different?
Well, not binging and purging is going to give it a break.
Well, from that aspect, but I'm talking about the shame, the self-loathing. What do you think that does to your body?
Oh, that's horrible.
I know. Yeah. It's like, well, of course the binging and the purging, but more important to me, that because those things are natural psychological impulses for someone in survival mode. I'm talking about the shame, the guilt. That's like poison. So if the space you're in now lasts for 6 months, that would be awesome, right? I'm kind of glad you have all these numbers right now, because your numbers are more reflective of where you were before we started our work together. Your A1Cs, that's usually a 3-month test. Like 3 months ago, where were you at? You were probably in hell.
I was.
Uh-huh. So give that some time. You know, you're recovering, and if not recovered, we'll see. We kind of got to live in reality to know where you're at in the process of it. And you know, by giving this, by shifting your awareness, how that impacts your overall physicality is significant. So if you're aware of that, you got to be able to trust that in 6 months from now, if your numbers are still elevated and off and not within range, then there might be some chronic issues that you really need medical help with. So when you go back for your follow-up, you might want to open up about this recovery, but you're not as impulsive anymore. You don't have the same shame anymore. You don't feel the same pressure and anxiety. You know what? If we look at your symptoms, what symptoms? Imagine that we started taking a pill the day we started work together. Okay? What would you say that pill has done? For you to describe symptoms, right? Describing symptoms, psychological, emotional, and physical. What symptoms are gone or are new?
What's gone is the fear, anxiety, guilt, shame. I have more of an awareness. I'm not embarrassed to talk to people, even people I've known for a long time.
So you're feeling more optimistic.
I'm comfortable.
You don't have social anxiety anymore?
No. Like, I would say with my social anxiety, if my level was 100, I would say that it's like at a 25.
Yeah, so that's normal. That's totally within whatever we call normal. In terms of how we are as animals.
Yeah, because I went to a baby shower this weekend, and there were lots of people there I didn't know, and there were people there that I knew, and even in talking to people, like they were coworkers that I've known for a couple of years, that I'm friends with, like even them that I would know that I'd see in social situations outside of work, and even at work, but social situations outside of work, I'd get this anxiety. Like, what are we going to talk about? We're not at work. I have to be entertaining, just like... Yeah,
did you have, did your stomach feel acidic? You know, where your stomach is acidic? Did you have stomach issues?
No.
Okay, no stomach issues. How about heart palpitations?
I would often get those, like my heart would skip a beat.
Yeah, heart racing, heart palp. So those are things. How about headaches?
Yes, but not very often.
So that wasn't something that okay. I'm talking about the specific symptoms before compared to now. So if that wasn't like a big symptom before and it's not a big symptom now.
No.
You know, how's your energy? Is it less?
No, I have more. Like, before, I just wanted to sleep all the time. I was so depressed. I just wanted to sleep. I didn't care if I got up before I had to go to work.
Yeah, tired all the time.
Right. But now I'm getting up a tad earlier because I want to get up. Not because, if I'm staying in bed longer, it's because I am actually tired. Not because I don't want to get up and have to face another day.
Yeah. Are you more, would you say you're just more optimistic and motivated? Motivated, like more motivated?
Oh, certainly.
So overall life motivation has improved.
Yes.
How about sex drive?
Some, but not much.
Okay. I'm talking significant. So these are
Yeah.
things you're going to want to go in and talk about. Say, when you did this test, were you suicidal?
Oh, I see. Well, when I talked to you the first time, yes, but that was a month before the testing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How long were you kind of in that space of like, I don't want to live anymore?
I mean, not serious contemplation.
Yeah, but it was at least like life sucks.
Like anything would be better than this.
Yes. Okay, that's pretty close. That is close. There does come a point where you feel like you're hopeless and you feel helpless, those two paired together, and you realize, why am I even existing? Yeah.
Oh, years.
Okay, years. Okay, so you had years of dark.
Going to work and,
so years. Okay. Of, I wouldn't say you were suicidal, but suicidal in your you were lifeless. Years of lifeless.
Yes.
Lifeless.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you see where if you're carrying all of these, how that can impact your organs, your endocrine system?
Oh.
Should we blame it all on your weight? It just sounds so silly to me. It's like, we should blame it all on your weight. You losing weight's going to remove all that. No, it's not.
No, there are plenty of thin people that feel the same way.
Correct. And have heart attacks.
For sure.
Yes. In fact, statistically, I think I read somewhere that you're more likely to have a heart attack when you're on a diet. Which I'm like, I wonder if that has to do with the stress of maintaining the weight loss, or just the overall anxiety around food that is actually increasing those cortisol, cortisone and your cholesterol, and I don't know. There's so much studying out there,
when you're dieting, you still think about, is this going to last? There's still an anxiety. Even when you're doing well, there's still an underlying anxiety, knowing that any minute I could blow it.
Yeah, well, and that's actually worse.
I will blow it. When is that going to happen?
Yeah, well, and it's worse. And because you're holding on to the pride of the thinness, that if people see it, now you have pressure to maintain it. And so you increase the stress and anxiety, and you have new symptoms of paranoia. You're paranoid. So you add that to the symptom when you're losing weight. Paranoia. Worry. Tons of worry. Oh, anyway, so that's something you might want to think about when you go in and talk to them about these final results, and just say, I am hopeful. And I'm wondering, and you can ask the question, I'm wondering if, like the pre-diabetes, if because of this complete and total change in my sense of being physically, all those are physical symptoms. So they're just manifesting in psychological terminology, right? Guilt has a physical feeling to it. Clearly, anxiety and fear do as well, right? Shame. There is a physicality to shame. Embarrassment. Embarrassment is like shrinking, hiding. Your posture changes. I mean, it's physically manifested. So, this social anxiety, how it affects your hair, your gut, chemistry, all of these things. So if we've eliminated the source and the cause from a perceptual point of view, given time, will these numbers change without medication? That is just a question you might want to bring up with this doctor, who seems to be really level-headed.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
So far.
Well, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if it stays this way. I mean, if it's starting with this level-headedness and she's not in a panic fury, judging you and telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing immediately, that's a good sign that she's looking at this more holistically. So.
Yeah, I can see that. And when I had my first appointment with her a couple months ago, she didn't lecture me on my weight, and she initially went for a knee problem. And she said, okay, well, we'll take care of your knee first, and then we'll talk about the rest. Then we'll talk about the rest of you later. Well,
God, I really like this. I like this doctor a lot.
My knee got healed. Then she decided to do blood work after that.
I like this person. I think this was meant to be honest with you. Could you imagine doing the work that we're doing with a doctor who's an asshole about your weight?
No, because all of them have been. They tried to put me on these fasting, I don't know, these meal fasting. Yeah. It's even called a fasting diet.
I know. Well, that's So yeah, I think this would be a good conversation for her. Just to kind of review, like, let me explain to you all the symptoms that I had before I got help, and I'm still getting help, but all of these symptoms are gone.
I'll do that tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, and just say, how can that, if I've given time, would it benefit me to continue to do the work I'm doing and come back in 3 months to retest this?
Okay.
Just ask the question. Is this something, is it fair to say that I should, you can stay on the blood pressure meds since that's been chronic.
Yeah.
But, in terms of like your blood sugar, and would it be fair to wait 3 months to give you, you're not binging anymore. There's no pressure to perform. I think that's important for you to recognize. We're not asking you to perform. We're just telling you to just keep on doing what you're doing. Just see what happens. There's no guarantee. Your numbers could be the same in 3 months, but then we kind of have a better idea of like how the body is actually responding to this. So again, I think it's important you don't put pressure on the outcome. You're just open to see what happens.
Certainly. And if I always stayed pre-diabetic, that's not so bad.
No, considering the binging you're doing, of course it's not too bad. I mean, that binging is like, of course you're pre-diabetic every time you eat. Because you're diabetic as you binge, because you're clearly not making enough insulin for that amount of food. I know it's funny when you're like, every time I binged I was diabetic. Of course you were. So I also want you to be prepared for them to weigh you tomorrow and to be indifferent about it. Even what if it's up? What if it's down? What are you going to do?
Well, I know that it should not matter. If it's up, I would be a little concerned because I know that does affect, I was going to say affects my blood pressure, but because I'm working on, other things.
Can you afford to be concerned?
I don't even want to know I don't want to know the number.
Okay, could you, I need you to, that's not the right answer. I'm just going to say right now that not knowing is not, that's like not addressing the truth of what you're feeling. Okay, so the truth, that's why I bring this up. The truth of what you're feeling is, I want you to resolve that it's higher. Okay, we're going to look at it. Let's just imagine you're 5 pounds heavier. Can you afford to be concerned about that?
No, absolutely not.
So you need to accept if it's higher, I'm not going to do anything about it.
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
How does that feel?
so different than before. It feels wonderful.
Right? It's so easy. It's like, yeah. I'm not going to be concerned about it. If I'm concerned about it, that's like going, I need to lose weight. Bam! There's the trigger.
Right. The scale's not judging me.
No, the scale doesn't give a shit.
Judgment.
No one is judging you. And just because your weight's higher doesn't mean that your life, everything's catastrophized. Again, let's try not to catastrophize that.
Okay.
So go in assuming it might be heavier. I've been eating to hunger. I've been, I don't care. So there's an alternative to that, though, is that what if it's like 15 pounds less? Can you see how that could be triggering?
Right.
Even 10 pounds or even 5 pounds less. The excitement of going, oh, what is that going to do? If you care about it, what's going to happen?
If I care, it would set you back into a diet cycle.
Yeah, you got it. Either direction. Yeah. Either direction. If you actually care about your weight in any direction, that's the problem.
Okay.
So what you've got to be able to realize is I will never care about my weight again. I don't care anymore. It's not worth suffering for any direction. My body naturally loses weight. Good for it. It's none of my business. I don't care. I don't expect it. I don't want it. I don't want the pressure of maintaining whatever it loses. It's none of my business. It is the body's business, not mine. So whether I gain or lose is none of my flipping business. And I can't afford to have an opinion about it. It's not my business.
Interesting.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't that what you want?
That is exactly what I want.
So I need you to contemplate that and practice that in your mind before you go in, so that you can not. It doesn't matter what you weigh. It doesn't matter if they weigh you and tell you how much you weigh. And she says, "Well, you've gained a couple pounds." Oh well, I'm not going to do it anymore. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever that weight is my body's natural way of being. I'm not going to sit here and argue with that. So the doctor has to accept whatever that natural weight is.
Right, and so do I.
Yeah, you do, because if you don't, and if your doctor doesn't, guess who gets to suffer?
Me.
Yeah, so you have to get to where it is. You are indifferent. You are basically saying, body, you are allowed to be as fat as you need to be, and as thin as you need to be. I don't care. It's none of my business. It's not my priority. I am permanently surrendering that from my life.
Okay.
And you sign on the dotted line that you will permanently and forever, for not only this body, but the next body, if you would get to reincarnate forever and forever, that you will never again play the role of God over the body.
I will not do it.
Isn't it awesome? Isn't it like, no shit? I learned my lesson. Thank God that it is not my job.
Anymore.
Nope. So whatever the body is, because it could have permanently been damaged. You got to be forgiving about that. So if it's permanently damaged, you have to accept whatever it is right now. And right now you're living pretty basic. So however it's responding to this is its prerogative, not yours.
Okay.
You see that now? Isn't that the best? So I knew with this last amount of time, we're finishing up now. I needed to bring that up since you're going back in tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That gives me a lot to think about.
Yeah. Let's schedule to follow up. Let's schedule for next week.
Okay.